red Cougar. I come in on the south end of the town, and it was about like all them little mountain villages. One straggling street, hound dogs sleeping in the dust of the wagon ruts, and a general store and a couple of saloons. I seen some hosses tied at the hitching rack outside the biggest saloon, which said Mac's Bar on it, but I didn't see nobody on the streets, though noises of hilarity was coming out of the saloon. I was thirsty and dusty, and I decided I better have me a drink and spruce up some before I called on Miss Pritchard. So I watered Captain Kidd at the trough and tied him to a tree. If I'd tied him to the hitch rack, he'd a kicked the tar out of the other hosses, and went into the saloon. They warn't nobody in there but an old coot with gray whiskers tending bar, and the noise was all coming from another room. From the racket I jedged they was a bowlin' alley in there, and the gents was bowlin'. I beat the dust out of my pants with my hat and called for whiskey. Whilst I was drinking it, the feller said, "Stranger in town, eh?" I said I was, and he said, "Friend of Buck Ridgway's?" "Never seen him in my life," says I, and he says, "Then you better get out of town fast as you can dust it. Him and his bunch ain't here. He pulled out jest a little while ago, but Jeff Middleton's in there, and Jeff's plenty bad." I started to tell him I weren't studying Jeff Middleton, but just then a lot of whooping bust out in the bowling alley like somebody'd made a tin strike or something, and here comes 6 men busting into the bar, whooping and yelling and slapping one of 'em on the back. "Decorate the mahogany, McVeigh!" they whooped. "Jeff's buying. He just beat Tom Grissom here 6 straight games." They surged up to the bar, and one of 'em tried to jostle me aside, but as nobody ain't been able to do that successful since I got my full growth, all he done was sprain his elbow. This seemed to irritate him, because he turned around and said heatedly, "What the hell you think you're doing?" "I'm drinking me a glass of corn squeezins," I replied coldly, and they all turned around and looked at me, and they moved back from the bar and hitched at their pistol belts. They was a hard-looking gang, and the fellow they called Middleton was the hardest-looking one of 'em. "Who are you, and where'd you come from?" he demanded. "None of your damn business," I replied, with a touch of old Southern courtesy. He showed his teeth at this and fumbled at his gun belt. "Are you trying to start something?" he demanded, and I seen McVeigh hide behind a stack of beer kegs. "I ain't in the habit of starting trouble," I told him. "All I does is end it. I'm in here drinking me a quiet dram when you coyotes come surging in, hollering like you was the first critter which ever hit a pin." "So you depreciates my talents, eh?" he squalled like he was stung to the quick. "Maybe you think you could beat me, eh?" "I ain't seen the man which could hold a candle to my game," I replied with my usual modesty. "All right," he yelled, grinding his teeth. "Come into the alley, and I'll show you some action, you big mountain grizzly." "Hold on," says McVeigh, sticking his head up from behind the kegs. "Be careful, Jeff. I believe that's—" "I don't care who he is," raved Middleton. "He has give me a mortal insult. Come on, you, if you got the nerve." "You be careful with them insults," I roared menacingly, striding into the alley. "I ain't the man to be bulldozed." I was looking back over my shoulder when I shoved the door open with my palm, and I probably pushed harder'n I intended to, and that's why I tore the door off of the hinges. They all looked kind of startled, and McVeigh give a despairing squeak, but I went on into the alley and picked up a bowl ball which I brandished in defiance. "Here's $50," I says, waving the greenbacks. "We puts up 50 each and rolls for $5 a game. That suit you?" I couldn't understand what he said, because he just made a noise like a wolf grabbing a beefsteak, but he snatched up a bulldog and produced 10 $5 bills, so I jedged it was agreeable with him. But he had an awful temper, and the longer we played, the madder he got. And when I'd beat him 5 straight games and taken 25 out of his 50, the veins stood out purple onto his temples. "It's your roll," I says, and he throwed his bowl ball down and yelled, "Blast your soul, I don't like your style. I'm through, and I'm taking down my stake. You gets no more of my money, damn you." "Why, you cheap-heeled piker," I roared. "I thought you was a sport, even if you was a hoss thief, but—" "Don't call me a hoss thief!" he screamed. "Well, cow thief, then," I says, "if you're so durned particular." It was at this instant that he lost his head to the point of pulling a pistol and firing at me point blank. He would have undoubtedly shot me, too, if I hadn't hit him in the head with my bowl ball just as he fired. His bullet went into the ceiling, and his friends began to display their disapproval by throwing pins and bulldogs at me. This irritated me almost beyond control, but I kept my temper and taken a couple of 'em by the neck and beat their heads together till they was limp. The matter would have ended there without any violence, but the other 3 insisted on taking the thing serious, and I defy any man to remain tranquil when 3 hoss thieves are carving at him with buoys and beating him over the head with 10-pins. But I didn't intend to bust the big ceiling lamp. I just hit it by accident with the chair which I knocked one of my enemies stiff with. And it weren't my fault if one of 'em got blood all over the alley. All I'd done was break his nose and knock out 7 teeth with my fist. How'd I know he was going to fall in the alley and bleed on it? As for that section of wall which got knocked out, all I can say is it's a dern flimsy wall which can be wrecked by throwing a man through it. I thought I'd throwed him through a winder till I looked closer and seen it was a hole he busted through the wall. And can I help it if them scallywags blowed holes in the roof till it looked like a sieve trying to shoot me? It wasn't my fault nohow. But when the dust settled and I looked around to see if I'd made a clean sweep, I was just in time to grab the shotgun which old man McVeigh was trying to shoot me through the barroom door with. "You ought to be ashamed," I reproved. "A man of your age and venerable whiskers, trying to shoot a defenseless stranger in the back." "But my bowling alley's wrecked," he wept, tearing the aforesaid whiskers. "I'm a ruined man. I sunk my wad in it, and now look at it." "Ah, well," I says, "it warn't my fault, but I can't see an honest man suffer. Here's $75, all I got." "'Tain't enough," says he, nevertheless making a grab for the dough like a kingfisher diving after a pollywog. "'Tain't near enough." "I'll collect the rest from them coyotes," I says. "Don't do it," he shuddered. "They'd kill me after you left." "I want to do the right thing," I says. "I'll work out the rest of it." He looked at me right sharp then and says, "Come into the bar." But I seen 3 of them was coming too, so I hauled 'em up and told 'em sternly to tote their friends out to the hoss trough and bring 'em too. They done so, kind of wabbling on their feet. They acted like they was still addled in the brains, and McVeigh said it looked to him like Middleton was out for the day. But I told him it was quite common for a man to be like that, which has just had a 15-pound bowling ball split into 2 over his head. Then I went into the bar with McVeigh, and he poured out the drinks. "Are you in earnest about working out that debt?" says he. "Sure," I said. "I always pays my debts, by fair means or foul." "Ain't you Breckenridge Elkins?" says he. And when I says I was, he says, "I thought I recognized you when them fools was badgering you. Look out for them. That ain't all of 'em. The whole gang rode into town an hour or so ago and run the sheriff and his